And instead of talking about my career path, I'm basically going to focus on really one element of my career background, and that's really where I started my professional career. And this was in the United States Marine Corps. I served for 13 years as an infantry officer in the Marine Corps, and I'm going to talk a little about today about how what I learned in the Marine Corps and how that experience has carried with me through all my professional endeavors, as well as the different environments where I've managed. Whether it's in AIG today in the insurance world, or BPO, or healthcare information technology, or even commercial finance from a previous role. So bear with me if I make some maybe some pretty stretched analogies through the course of my presentation. I'll also make a confession as well, and this may be a surprise to many of you, but I didn't originally dream of being an insurance man when I was a teenager thinking about my career and where I would be. It wasn't exactly the career track that I thought of in terms of being sexy, romantic, exciting, on the cutting edge. So something like this was much more what I was focused on when I was 18, 19, 20 years old. And it's led me through a series of maybe career accidents to be where I am today. Unfortunately, even some people would say now that insurance still is not sexy, exciting, or romantic, but I'll try to maybe change your mind on a couple of those points today as well. So initially, I chose an alternate career path, and that was starting out in the military, as I mentioned, in the U.S. Marine Corps, which was no doubt exciting, but also as I transitioned later on into the corporate world, I faced the questions about, was my 13 years in the military relevant? And what value or what sort of competencies or what sort of contribution did that make to my career track, as well as to the organizations which I became a part of after the Marine Corps. My role was as an infantry officer, so loosely translated, you could say I was an operations manager in the military. In terms of my mission, it was to maximize combat power, focused on the main objective in order to overcome and destroy an enemy or achieve an objective. Is that relevant to what I do today? Well, you could actually rephrase that a little bit, and you could say that my mission today as a CEO of an insurance company here is to create competitive advantage and focus that advantage on a target market or a strategic market segment where we have long-term plans. Slightly different, maybe verbiage, but same exact foundations of what I was called upon to do previously, as well as today. No guns, no bullets, no tanks, but still same sort of approach. The other half of my mission was to lead an air-ground task force with combined arms and to minimize casualties and battle damage in achieving my objective. Again, sounds fairly different from the world I live in today, but maybe not so much in terms of the fundamentals, because I could replace those same words and come up with to leverage the resources, maximize them, and generate efficiencies relative to the competitors that we have in the market today. Same basic fundamentals. So the professional development and the core principles of leadership have been pretty much the same throughout each company that I've been part of since the Marine Corps, as well as the different countries where I've managed as well. The United States, Philippines, and Malaysia, as Richard mentioned as well. I think they're universal themes, and I'll share with you at least maybe 4 of them today. The first one, I think a number of our presenters today have talked about change and being ready for change and ready for transformation. And certainly that's probably the most enduring lesson that I took away from my time in the Marine Corps as well. To prepare for the unexpected. But more than just prepare for the unexpected, to be comfortable in an environment of uncertainty and in making decisions in an environment where you have imperfect information or maybe very little information, poor resources, and maybe even an unclear direction. And maybe just to highlight this a little bit, this was brought home to me very clearly in my very first assignment in the Marine Corps. I was 2 weeks into my first command as a new lieutenant in the Marines, and this was in the United States. It just happened that my infantry battalion was on air alert. So we were the unit that was set aside where in 4 hours we had to be ready to go anywhere in the world on alert. This was 1992, so most of our expectations, having just completed the first Gulf War, was that we'd be back on a plane coming back to the Middle East and back to Kuwait. So imagine my surprise where we did get an alert and we were activated, and as I was going back to our base thinking about, do I have enough desert-colored camouflage uniforms? Do I have enough water? Do I have enough sunscreen? Instead of getting on a plane and going back overseas, we actually got into our Humvees, into our Jeeps, and we drove up Interstate 5 between San Diego into Los Angeles. If you recall some of the U.S. Events of 1992, one of the major ones was a series of riots which occurred in Los Angeles around what was called the Rodney King trial. So we were sent into Los Angeles to quell riots when we were thinking that we would be going anywhere else in the world, but the last place we expected to go to, except on the weekends, maybe to the bars and pubs, was Los Angeles. So on top of that, we had no model for this engagement. No technical training, there's no doctrine, or at least we didn't at that point have any doctrine about quelling riots in Los Angeles. We weren't even sure exactly what to pack in terms of our kit. We had Jeeps and Humvees with machine guns. We put them on, thinking this would be good for intimidation purposes. We took them off, thinking that's way too high of a force profile. We put them back on, thinking no, this is a standard kit. We took them back off. We spent about an hour. Machine guns on, machine guns off. But we had to work through a number of questions like this. One of the other key anecdotes that showed the mismatch between expectations and then the reality of the operating environment in which we found ourselves was an incident. Actually, it was with some of the civilian police. We had civilian police and we had squads of Marines that were working in tandem together, but our job was mainly to worry about the big riots, the big events. The police, they did the civilian or the civil disturbance or the civil arrests, and we were there to support. At one point, there was a relatively routine arrest that was occurring. The suspect got a little belligerent, and one of the police officers said, "Hey, Marines, cover me." Well, in police jargon, cover me means, watch my back, be careful for something unexpected. If you tell a young Marine or a squad of Marines with automatic weapons, cover me, this has a very, very specific meaning in Marine jargon. That mission, to focus and maximize combat power on your main objective to overcome the enemy, that is the first thing that comes to mind for a 19-year-old Marine with an automatic weapon. So about 250 bullet holes later on in this house, the suspect immediately surrendered. He got a little more than what he was asking for, I think, from this the resistance he was putting up. And thank goodness there was no other harm done in this particular event. But clearly there was a mismatch in terms of what the expectations were and what their reality was, in terms of our training, our expectations, and the environment in which we found ourselves. The Marine Corps now calls this, or has a concept or a term for this, they call it the three-block war. And the three-block war is basically, it's a model which all Marines are basically provided at the very, very basic or their entry level about what to expect and how to transition your modes of thought as well as your modes of management and leadership. So the idea of the three-block war really parallels the mission of the Marine Corps in the various places where we operate around the world. And it might be that on one block you're focused on humanitarian aid. It might be relief of, for example, a typhoon, or handing out disaster relief supplies, or winning hearts and minds. But one block down the road, there might be a wholly different engagement, which is less permissive and more dangerous, perhaps, where maybe you're a peacekeeping operation between two violent or opposing factions. And then a third block later, or perhaps just minutes later in the same location, then you're faced with the full high-intensity conflict of a full-scale war or battle or non-permissive environment. And that is the reality of the modern-day battlefield. It isn't all one of or just one of those scenarios. And modern-day leaders in the military, 18, 19-year-old young men and women, have to be equipped to make very snap judgments about, do you lay down covering fire, or do you win the hearts and minds? That's a very, very difficult concept for an 18 or 19-year-old to master. It's a very difficult concept for most of us in this room to master as well in that stark of an environment. And later on in Somalia, outside of Los Angeles, we saw that in a very literal fashion, where there were 3-block wars, and that's exactly what was going on, one block after another block after another block. So what's my point with this anecdote here? I mean, hopefully you can see, or maybe I've heard from earlier today's presentations, that business in the 21st century isn't that unlike the 3-block war. We had a couple of presenters earlier talking about the disruptive effects of technology. For us in financial services and in insurance, the changing regulatory environment with massive consequences in terms of fines or regulatory penalties for non-compliance, demands of customers who have real-time information and lots of comparative data, as well as heightened expectations, the speed of communications and digital media, where a story can go viral in minutes or hours, either for good or for ill. So how do you prepare for this sort of environment? How does the Marine Corps prepare that organization for this environment, and how does that apply to us here? Next slide, please. So I'm going to give you a couple cuttings from the Marine Corps' doctrine on warfare. It's called warfighting. And again, every Marine from their very first weeks in the Marine Corps is expected to read this document. It's actually about a 60-page book. And it talks about, not so much doctrine, it's really about philosophy. The philosophy of an environment in which leaders at all levels need to operate and be comfortable in. So the first one, or the first aspect of it, is the nature of war. So basically highlighting that all actions occur within this fog of war, and you can never have perfect information. Put simply from my drill sergeant, he said, we don't promise you a rose garden. Life is not perfect, and that your environment will not be perfect. And instead of complaining about it or wishing it was different, you have to embrace it and find a way to work within it, because it's not going to change. The other aspect of the nature of war was the fog of war, basically uncertainty. Oh, thanks for skipping one. But yes, the nature of war and uncertainty. But this can also be translated into business speak as well. So if you look at the nature of business in the 21st century today. Also uncertainty, lack of clear direction, changing customer demands very, very quickly. As well as for many of us who are maybe part of large multinationals, even lack of clarity within our own organization as they get to very, very significant scope and scale. So one of the key, concepts the Marine Corps teaches its leaders is about tempo. And the Marine Corps is it's not known for having the most advanced weaponry and equipment. They even take some pride in that fact, because the focus is really on how do you utilize the most powerful weapon you have, which is the people in your organization. Get another parallel with any organization. But tempo is the most powerful weapon that the Marine Corps focuses on developing and deploying. And it's the speed of decision making, the speed of not reacting, but really proacting in a situation, causing your opponents to react to you. Again, that's not so much different from the business community as well, where tempo, instead of being a weapon, can be a competitive differentiator. All of us are part of organizations where if we are faster to understand what our customers need and want, or if we can indeed understand it and deliver it before our customers even know to ask for it, that's true competitive differentiation. That's tempo. So in AIG today, I apply the term of tempo and these concepts in a variety of different areas. Previously, when I ran our shared services in Alabang, in bringing innovation into the insurance market. We started off in Alabang in 2002, mostly transactional back office processing. Now what we do is very high value claims, adjusting and underwriting, and a variety of other services across the whole value chain for insurance. But developing a new service or creatively adapting our capabilities here to meet a high value knowledge process is one aspect of generating tempo in terms of how we interact with our customers in different markets around the world. In our core insurance business here, my challenge, and Scott Judy out here in the audience, who heads our marketing, our challenge is in tempo of bringing new products into the market here and connecting those products with the emerging risks of a global economy, and certainly one where the Philippines is taking a larger and larger aspect of that global economy. So areas like cyber risk, professional liability, large construction and infrastructure projects, These may not all sound sexy and exciting, to go back to my earlier analogy, but deploying $1 billion in capacity to back some of the major infrastructure growth and development here in the Philippines, or ensuring against intangible liability where there is certainly imperfect information, and it's difficult to quantify. This requires the same sort of aggressiveness of thought and tempo of making decisions in an imperfect environment. The same concepts which we applied in the Marine Corps in a very different world. So I'll quickly hit the next couple of themes. Number 2 and 3 are closely related. And really, the second theme is a focus on execution and on achievement. And the third one is a corollary to that, and that's execution is all about people. In this slide here, this is a Marine, or it's a CH-46 helicopter. It was designed in 1963. I think this one was actually built in 1965. This picture is from the late 90s, and it's still frontline, or was then still frontline service of the Marine Corps, and still is today, even 20 years after this picture was taken. So the Marine Corps historically has been the smallest of the branches of the U.S. military, also has the least amount of funding, and has been known for doing more with less. Even helicopters that are 30 years old, or now 45 years old. The Marine Corps has made a badge of pride out of this fact. In fact, the recruiting slogan for the Marines for many years was, "We're looking for a few good men," not looking for high technology, the most advanced weapon systems, the best pilots. That was not what the Marine Corps was after. They were looking for the best human capital. And today, that's more maybe appropriately phrased as the few, the proud, because it's an organization of both men and women. So this slogan really captures the essence of the Marine Corps philosophy about people. It's not assets, but people and the human capital which determine the outcome of a battle or the accomplishment of a mission. Again, the parallel for AIG, for my role, and I think for what I heard from all the speakers today, is very, very much the same. It's the focus on people which is most important in an organization. I probably spend 75% of my time on people, talent management, coaching and mentoring, various aspects of leadership, but dealing with people. And every day I'm reminded of, or I pull from my lessons from the Marine Corps, and more specifically that leadership is a moral obligation to care for those in your responsibility, not just the privilege of a rank or title. I'm also blessed to be part of a very large global organization. AIG has 65,000 employees around the world, amazing professionals with probably unparalleled experience and expertise in understanding and underwriting every type of risk in every type of industry around the world. What we do, though, is we don't make tangible products. We basically deliver a promise on a piece of paper that says that we'll be with our customers at the time of need. And generally, it's the time of greatest need, whether it's a commercial loss or a personal tragedy. So it's the intellectual capital and the dedication behind those individuals that really delivers our commitment to our customers, and for me, makes it a worthwhile enterprise and a worthwhile organization to be a part of, much less to have the honor to lead. So like the picture here, it's not necessarily the technology, or sorry, the previous picture, this old helicopter. It's not the technology which drives our value, but it's the people in that helicopter. The same thing with AIG, and really with all the organizations that I've been part of in my career. So this really takes me to the last of my 4 themes. And this theme is, maybe it's a little more personal somewhat than rather organizational. But it's what I took away from my experience in the Marine Corps and what kept me going every day, and what challenged me to do better and do more, and which has led me then into a variety of organizations and career paths since then. And that's the theme that, to identify what your passions are and align your values with an organization that matches those values, where you can work in cooperation with that organization on shared values, not against it, or not because this is what I do during a 9-to-5 job, and then I go home and that's really where I pursue my values. Being a CEO or a GM or a vice president or a regional manager, that's not a worthy goal. And as I confessed at the beginning of my presentation, that wasn't my goal at the beginning of my career, certainly not in insurance. But building and leading an organization to accomplish an objective, preferably one with a higher goal and a higher aspiration, that is a goal. That is a worthy goal. And in my time in the Marine Corps, and one of my personal, fulfillments was that my time in the Marine Corps filled multiple callings for me. It was a job, it was an income, it was also a profession and a career, it was an identity, but it was also a profession which served a higher calling from my point of view, protecting others, championing justice and democracy, providing humanitarian relief for people affected by calamities and disasters. These were objectives which propelled and motivated me to do more and to want to do more in that career track. And I think as Mars pointed out in his closing, which I really enjoyed, because these were also callings for which I had a passion and for which I could answer to my Maker someday when I have to look up at my Lord and answer for my time here on this earth. So in my current role, an insurance executive or a CEO, the calling may not have the apparent same sense of urgency as a platoon commander in the Marine Corps. But the alignment of values with the contributions of the larger organization are just as profound. AIG, unlike the Marine Corps, is a for-profit enterprise, but I also believe that capitalism and the competitive market forces which are a component can be a very great force for lifting whole communities and societies to a higher standard of living. And in providing the underpinning for economic development and an improving economy, not to mention more immediate needs for relief from losses and disaster, I feel that AIG is a force for building better and sustainable communities. This is something that I have a passion for, and it's not something I maybe thought about when I was a teenager thinking about my career track, but it's certainly something that I see every day in my current role. I also see it in the people around AIG globally. There was a reference earlier about the global financial crisis, and I think many of you know or heard AIG's very prominent role in the global financial crisis. The experience of 2008 led many, both in our company as well as around the world, to call into question whether the free market and capitalism really could be a force for positive growth and for positive social impact around the world. I believe still very much that yes, it is and will be when appropriately managed and governed. And that's what I've also seen from AIG and the 65,000 employees that have built this company and have also rebuilt this company over the last 6 years. We paid back over $182 billion to the U.S. government, which supported us in that time of crisis, in addition to $22 billion in surplus and profit from that investment of the U.S. government. Today, we've relaunched the AIG brand across the entire world. We've also reorganized the company in a global force to really deploy the full capabilities of one AIG in every market, including the Philippines, where we operate. But that didn't come easy, and it didn't come with quite a bit of hard work and quite a bit of risk for those of us who were part of the company in the midst of that global financial crisis. In the Marine Corps, there was an easier way to describe this. The sense of dedication to duty and living up to the moral imperatives of leadership, we called that honor, and it was a term that we used on a very regular basis. In the corporate world, that terminology maybe is a little more sanitized. We talk about compliance and corporate governance. They're not such a catchy phrase as maybe as honor is. But what's important is being part of an organization that has that same code and that same value and the same aspiration to pursue an honorable role and an honorable role in the societies and in the communities in which we operate. That is an honorable pursuit, and one which I've found to be sexy, romantic, and exciting in retrospect and in that context. So I think the fourth point which I wanted to highlight was if you know where your passions lie, and if you seek out to join, to build, and to lead organizations or companies which match that value system, you will be successful. You may not have a C-level title, or you may, but it's really going to be irrelevant if you're living your values and you are part of or leading or building an organization which is a value-based organization with that larger purpose. So in conclusion, hopefully that my sharing of these 4 memorable themes from the Marine Corps, which was at least initially, my formative experience for my career path, hopefully that's been valuable to you. The United States Marine Corps it's a fairly unique organization in terms of culture, values, its focus on indoctrination. So my message is not to go out and join the military, much less the Marine Corps. It's not a message that the Marine Corps is perfect. It's certainly not a perfect organization. And nor should you ban the term manager and just use leader, such as what we've done or had done in the Marine Corps. But I guess it's a statement about wherever you started and wherever you've come, it's important to recognize and embrace those core principles and continue to build on them. I'm proud to see these similar values and principles here in the Philippines. It's part of the reason that I was very excited to come back in a new role or a different role within AIG in the Philippines, and proud to be part of an organization where people share the same focus. So I hope that my sharing of some of the tenets of the Marine Corps' philosophy on warfighting have been valuable to you, and I hope that I haven't kept you too long from networking and, I guess, cocktails and drinks to follow. So thank you very much. Thank you for having me.